Hello and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse, stories of survival and hope after financial abuse in a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G., and I'm excited to welcome today Stephanie Russell from the Ark Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Shelter, which serves a wide area of Central Texas. Stephanie is a community educator with a medical background who found her passion through an internship and decided to devote her professional career to providing education and community resources to survivors of all types of domestic abuse. Stephanie believes recovery from abuse is not a one-size-fits-all program, but instead is as individual as a snowflake and requires individual care and empathy. Stephanie, welcome to the program.
Hey, Lori, thanks for having me.
So, where in the world are you now, and where are you originally from?
I am right this minute, sitting at my desk at the Ark, and we are located in Brownwood, Texas. And originally, I grew up about 45 miles south of here in a small town, San Saba, Texas. So I'm pretty local, which I had relocated a couple of years ago, kind of came back to take care of my parents, who my dad was having poor health, and was actually in Michigan prior to that for a year. And prior to that, I was in Austin. So I was kind of more in an urban setting. So these last couple of years, I've kind of had to get reacclimated into being into rural Texas. So it's been a learning experience, even though I grew up here.
What's the closest major city to you? Just an idea, since Texas is so big.
Well, it is big, and I always say we are located in the belly button of Texas. So if you stuck your finger right in the middle of Texas, that is where we are located. And we are kind of generally located, so we're kind of 2 hours from Fort Worth, 2 hours, give or take, to Austin. Abilene would be a little bit closer, which is not one of the larger cities. And then I think we're probably 5 hours from Houston. You figure if you get in your car and you drive 2 hours, any direction you go, you're going to hit a major city.
So you've become really passionate about helping survivors of domestic violence find safety and recovery, but you didn't initially come into that professional world as a survivor yourself, as many of us do. Tell us how you got interested in becoming an advocate for survivors of domestic violence.
Well, I had been I'm a retired nurse. And whenever I moved back to take care of my folks, I moved back with the intention of taking care of my father, had built a little, nursing home inside my home and everything. So when he passed, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do now? So I found myself at the local university, and I walked in and said, I think I'm here to be a social worker. I didn't know didn't know what the universe had in store for me, because from there, my internship ended up at the Ark. And it was kind of like I didn't know the direction I wanted my internship to go, what population I wanted to go to. And I just fell on it by accident. And it's just been eye-opening. You think you know everything until you get into that situation, and it is just like so much more awareness. So I was very blessed to have my internship, and I did that for a year. And while I was doing my internship, the community educator position opened up, and I was like, you know what? I think that is the job I am made to do. And at that point, I was kind of like, I don't even care if I finish going with my social work degree. But now I've finished my social work degree, and I like it so much that I'm picking up my psychology degree. So I'm, going to hopefully complete school by May and go from there. But yeah, it's just been an accident, but I do feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in life. And the more I know, the more I want to spread the awareness to everybody else.
Well, the Ark's mission statement says that you provide comprehensive resident and non-resident support services, one family at a time. What do you mean by that, one family at a time?
I think the term one family at a time really falls into we all have so many different needs. Everybody has to be treated as that individual where they are at that point in time. Because if you try to put everybody in one category, you're going to miss something, because domestic violence and sexual assault, because we're the domestic violence and sexual assault program for Comanche County, Coleman County, and Brown County. So we serve a large area, which is a really large population. But if you try to just figure out kind of a prescribed thing and cover everybody, you're going to miss so many different factors, because our population is all genders, all races, all ages. That's the other thing, is people don't ever realize that we have kiddos at the shelter and kiddos in our outreach services. We have elderly people. People always think of that as the golden years, but you don't realize how many people are affected with domestic violence and sexual assault in the geriatric population. So it's like it can't be cookie cutter, because everybody is different. So that one family at a time, that is just, I saw whenever I first started this job, there was something on the desk that I inherited, and it was a little poem, and I wish I would have treasured it and put it up, and I probably did put it up and forgot where I put it, but it was talking about this young man was watching somebody on the beach dancing around and was trying to throw all the starfishes back into the ocean. And the beach was just covered with all the starfishes. And he walked up and he said, "Sir, there's no way you're going to be able to save all those starfishes." And the guy turned around and he goes and threw one back in. And he said, "Yeah, but it mattered to that one starfish." Now, I probably screwed that story up completely, but it is, whenever you're sitting down with that one person, that one family, you're making a difference at that time with that person, accustomed to their individual needs.
Well, tell us how the ARC's process works. So a woman who is fleeing an abusive home, maybe she's got hours notice. Is that the average? Do you usually have very, very short notice? And she contacts your organization and she needs immediate help. Tell us how your process works.
It happens so many different ways, because so many different times it will be people that have to be evacuated by either law officials or somebody assisting them. But the victim, or that person, I hate using the word victim, but that person has to call into the ARC to get our services. It has to be initiated by that person. So, and like I said, many different faces, whether it be a single person with children, and also a single person with children plus their pets, because we do have a kennel services. And that is one thing that is kind of makes this a little bit more unique than other agencies or shelters, is we do have that kennel service. Because a lot of times you're fleeing and you're taking your valuables, you're taking your loved ones, but then you have to take the fur babies have to stay home. So that is a great service that we do have these kennels, because that does ease that part of your mind, that you're not leaving that part of your family at home. So that is one thing, is we do accommodate with the kennel services. Well, and I could really see that, what a huge issue that is, because pets can be weaponized. You've got an abusive partner, like, well, you leave, you're never going to see your dog again, Right. And you don't have a way of taking that dog with you. That is, and it becomes a bargaining point, and, a form of manipulation of, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen to Fido since you and the kids are gone. That is really, that falls into that manipulation and all those different mind games that people that are under the umbrella of domestic violence fall into, just like financial abuse. That's all these different bargaining mechanisms that somebody that is able to keep that person down and isolated and more under their control with different aspects, whether it be your pets, your children, the mind games, the emotional welfare. So, the finances really can stem into, even with pets, with the, too bad you don't have enough money to buy the dog food. Or what are you going to do when it's time for, the dog shots? You don't have the money. So it falls into that manipulation as well. Yeah, I mean, just the threat of, I might just leave that dog outside. Or even in the cold right now, people are like, don't want to leave a unsafe situation, because where are they going to go? It's cold. Then where's their animal going to stay, or their cats? Or, I mean, we even had a lady come in once that had bunnies with her. So, I mean, it's kind of individualized. I think before my time, I think they even had somebody that had snakes, gerbils, or hamsters or something. Anyway, it's kind of like you modify and you try to make anything work.
So when a woman comes into your process or your program, what does she receive first? Obviously, physical shelter, physical safety if necessary. But what is your next step from there?
Well, we sit down, and it's usually with the advocate, and we take it, whoever's coming in at that time, and kind of modifying, because it is a lot of paperwork and it's a lot to endure. And then you're processing all this with somebody that has gone through a very traumatic time. So kind of seeing where that person is at that time and going from there. So whether it's, some people come in and don't have any clothing with them, don't have shelter, and kind of forming a safety plan, and also seeing what resources that individual will need. So depending on their needs, where we go from there. So at that time, it might just be a safe room, safe place at that moment. And then the next day, actually, when things settle down, being able to get more in detail what resources this individual needs, or even being able to make ties with other families. So they might have family member that's in another town or even state, and seeing what we need to do to help them get transported to that area. Some people come in needing assistance with protective orders or lease agreements. I mean, and that goes into the financial abuse. You have all these different leases that, that person is afraid, oh, I've got this lease, I can't get out of this lease. So getting them with the right of person that knows how to see what the lease is entailing and whose name is on the lease, because sometimes people think their name is on the car title or the house or the pension or the bank accounts, but they've been manipulated or lied to all this time, and it's really a falsehood. So that kind of, you sit back and say, oh, I thought my name wasn't all that, but no, it wasn't. So it's all that different thing, but we also can help with change of address, providing a change of address, because, if you're not aware of being able to have that in place and change that address, your offender, you're just a sitting target for somebody that's been out to manipulate all your financial or physically abuse you, or even stalking. Like January is Stalking Awareness Month. So, there's so many different things that you open. It's almost like the Russian doll, right? Where you open it up and there's the other one inside, and there's another one inside. There's another one inside. I always think of that as the umbrella of domestic violence. You look underneath that, and there's all these other facets that lie under there, whether it's emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, the list goes on and on and on. But almost under each one of those, you see how it intertwines with everything else. So the isolation and feeling like you're stuck, I think on your website, I read it was 99% of people that are in domestic violence is financially abused. So you look at that just that key element, how much you are isolated and how stuck you really feel, because you don't have any other options, or you feel like you don't have other options.
Yeah, and it sounds like, that is the most immediate thing, is need for legal resources.
I think every person that comes in is not aware of what they're entitled to, because we've had clients come in that don't, they haven't had water. They haven't had, their water's been turned off. Their electricity is on, all these different things that they sit back and they don't feel like they had that resource to be able to pay that water bill, because that offender had been saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have spent money on this. You would have money to pay the water bill. But then you have the other end of the spectrum where they live very lavish lifestyle, but they don't think they have that access. They don't feel like they, they're over there almost panhandling in their own house. They have to either promise I have to cook dinner if I want to do this. It is such a bargaining tool that whenever they step away from it, they don't realize, oh, I did have that freedom. I just was not aware of it.
Yeah, they don't come in with much financial literacy because it's either been, deliberately denied them or just manipulated, I mean, just some abusers are great at just making up stuff. And
we
you
do
say it enough, you believe it.
We do so much work on the power and control wheel, which there's one, and it is the post-separation economic power and control wheel, and it deals all with the financial abuse. And you start looking at the different, wheels on this power and control wheel, which I guess is, the little different shoot-offs from the center. So you've got that power and control in the center, and you start seeing how many different areas that can affect. It's just, like the harassment at work, not being able to keep a job because your offender has been harassing you at work, whether it by calling you all the time or showing up at your work or even dropping the kids off at where you work. All this, so then you lose your job. So that offender is back to having all control over you.
Or you lose your job because you're not getting child support and kids get sick. There's no one to stay home with them. I mean, you're just rotating in and out all the time because you've got to deal with domestic stuff too, literally at your own expense.
That is another little thing that people don't even think about is, whenever you have the children and that other person is saying, well, I provide all the health insurance, that is a bargaining tool for them. And, that keeps mom, I'm just using mom as an example, or dad feeling like, oh, if I left, we wouldn't have any health insurance. We wouldn't have any finances. I wouldn't, my car isn't running right. And, all these different factors that keeps that person exactly, I always say under the thumb, it keeps you under that person's thumb. So, with limited, oh, I can't go get my prescriptions filled, or I can't go, buy my child the formula because I'm on limited resources. And if I left the situation, I would be even at dire needs, or even the mental factor of usually offenders, or a lot of times they will, make little remarks like, well, now that you have the children on financial assistance with the government, or, really making you feel like a pauper. And it's all that wear and tear on your mental, psyche or your self-esteem. So, or even pointing out with the children, oh, since mom has you on free lunches, all the other kids are really going to know something. But, a child, that's scary. That's very frightening. So, it's just all these, turmoil, the loops that goes around and round and round, and it kind of interloops with all the rest that you're like, wow, whenever you step away and look into it, you're like, I didn't even realize that was going on. It's so confusing. And when you're in the middle of it, you can't realize what's going on. But when you finally step away, and it takes many years sometimes before you realize, wow, I didn't know I was working 2 jobs, giving all my money to my husband and not being able to make ends meet. The mental and physical stress on your body of always worried about finances or having enough money to pay all the bills. Or even,
and that's abuse, and that it's abuse.
Yes.
It's, and we don't even see it as abuse. It's just, well, he's a jerk.
Yes.
But and to see that it's actually a domestic violence issue is very shocking, even to some people when they find out.
So many people aren't aware. Well, we always think of the stereotypical, back whenever, remember a billboard years ago, and it was, a lady with a black eye, and you just kind of associate that was a stereotypical, that was domestic violence. So you felt like you weren't that woman with that black eye, so that did not apply to you. Whereas you don't realize how domestic violence looks so many different ways. Same way with financial abuse. Even not having money for transportation to work is a form of financial abuse. The credit card, how many times, we hear it very often that other person had filled out all these credit applications and maxed them out on all these credit lines. So whoever we are talking to at that time, they are overwhelmed with all this debt that they didn't even get on their own. It was kind of forced situation. So it's eye-opening. And once you see it, you're just kind of like, wow, how did I not see what was
it's
going on?
It's like you can't unsee it. I feel
right,
exactly the same way.
And, that's why I really get, really on my soapbox or really passionate about getting the word out there, because there's so many people that you're kind of like, what? I didn't know that was wrong. That, it's just that was their normal way of life. Those offenders, they know how to push your buttons. They know how to show you all the, old pictures and text and all that if you're still in contact with them, and making you remember all the good times. They know how to get you, where your heart is.
What's the average length of time a woman stays?
Our facilities is set up for 42 days crisis. So that's not saying, right up on the day of 42 that, they are, kicked out on the street by any means. Sometimes there might be waiting for housing or different factors where we can make a little extension. But for the most part, and then sometimes people are there, a couple of days until they can get something set up and get out on, their own way. And, when they leave, they hopefully stay in contact with us and continue on with our outreach services, because we have a lot of different classes that they can attend. We have counseling, and everything is free and everything is confidential.
And that's so critical because, so many of us, we go back and then we shut down all the outside opinions because it's cognitive dissonance from hoping that this is going to get better.
Right.
And I think it's great that you folks actually have that outreach and encouragement to know this is an ongoing thing. This is not a finite thing. This is a growth thing. What does the Ark have coming up this year? I know we're just in January.
2025, and it's unbelievable. And I just want to add to something that you just mentioned, Lori, because it made me think. I was like, sometimes I feel like those that call our services, even if they are never in our actual shelter or don't even follow through with the outreach, we don't know where those seeds may be planted, and we don't know what's going to grow down the road, because at that moment, they may not be able to receive all that information. It might be next week when they call us back. It might be next month when they call us back. It might be 4 years when they call us back. But it's almost like the Ark gets the ball rolling, hopefully, gives them a little bit of education, gives them a little bit of safety planning, gives them a little bit of seeing what goals look like or what life is possible, a different one.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's like, that is something that I think is so almost you have to do a daily reminder to yourself, is like, right now, this is what it looks like, but we don't know what's going to look like down the road. So even whenever somebody doesn't call us back or doesn't follow up with the outreach services or even leaves the shelter, we don't know how that's going to hopefully turn out in the long run. So, some people have to process, and, change is hard. Adapting a different way of life is hard. And it's almost like, okay, I've been driving on the right side of the road all this time. It's time for me to drive on the left side. It's like having a life that is so different than what you have gotten accustomed to.
Yeah, and to be encouraged to do that and not be scared to do that, because, an abuser is always going to try to pull you back as best they can.
That building that self-worth and knowing that I want to change and I'm worthy of change, that's a hard thing to process and believe it, when you've been telling, or you've almost been brainwashed a different way that you're not worthy of this and you can't do it. And with finances, let me take care of that. That's too complicated for you to figure out. You've been under this guise for so long that you almost like when you sit down to do your own budgeting, you're like, well, this isn't that hard. Why was I told all this time that I couldn't be able to figure it out? So it is all those different elements. So back to the question of what we have in 2025, we are actually coming up in February. We have our fundraiser, which is we do a big casino night once a year, and that's coming up February the 15th. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, we have a company that comes in and sets up the card tables and the different slot machines and everything, and usually have some good music. But it's a good way to connect with the community, that we can get out, let people know what we do. Because a lot of people, that are here in the surrounding area have no clue what all we do. They think there's still the mindset or the stigma of it's a women's shelter.
I was going to say, that'll get the guys out there,
Yeah.
Get the cards
but, even whenever I have to remind myself not to think of it as the women's shelter, because, I'm 56. That's just what triggers in my mind. But to get out and let people know all the services we offer, whether it be the legal accompaniment for same, there's so many different factors. So that's one thing that is so great about the casino night, is people can look over what services we provide and be able to ask, because all the staff is there, and we're always wanting to reach out and help or answer questions. I think we're going to visit the Early Chamber, which is a chamber of commerce close to us, and do a little presentation on what human trafficking looks like. Because, a lot of people aren't even aware. They don't realize how many numbers are affected in this area with human trafficking, or that's just on TV, that's just on news, that's just in, bigger cities. So we've got the fundraiser, we've got the human trafficking at the end of the month. April is a big month. April starts the Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we do the Denim Days is towards the end of the month. I can't ever remember numbers, but it's towards the end of the month. So we will do that, and usually we have a night at the local university, which is Howard Payne University, and all the college kids come out and paint on the denim so they can wear the denim the next day for Denim Days, which, man, there's so many people, whenever you start telling them the story about the Denim Days, are usually not aware of that. And I had no clue until I started working at the Ark. I had never heard it. I was like, what have I just been under a rock? I had never heard of it until that. So now I like to really get involved with that, because that is something that the Ark has done for several years. So that's a cool thing. And this April, we're going to be trying Start Believing. It's the Start Believing campaign, which is a national campaign right now. That is when a victim comes to talk to you or shares your story, to what to say, how to handle it, where to go. So that is a really cool thing.
Sounds like a lot of what the Ark is doing personally ties into a lot of your own goals. But what else do you see for yourself, since you are so passionate about this?
Well, like I said earlier, I plan on graduating in May with that social work and psychology degree. And this weekend, actually, I sat down and started filling out all my applications to go on for my master's of social work. So that's where all that lines up. And, each day I just wake up and figure out where I'm going for that day. And, that is what is so great about this position with the Ark. I get the luxury of getting out in the community and talking to people. I think I, have different presentations that I'm getting set up within the school system, within the different chamber, and also the city organization, and even the senior centers. That is something that kind of fell in my lap, because, during the Christmas break, schools were closed and all that I was like, oh, wow, the senior center wants me to come talk. So, that is a whole different population that's opened my eyes. So I'm hoping to get more into like assisted living, or even training the employees at nursing homes. So, each day, Lori, I learn a little bit new. So that kind of falls into my own personal journey.
Well, and the senior population just continues to grow. And, a fixed income can be real attractive to a financial abuser, because they know that money is always going to come in. And they're really common for them to come in and take half.
That falls into so many people that think their loved ones is taking care of their finances. And then when you turn around, the finances have been spent or not taken care of. Or I heard of this elderly lady, and the person that was helping her with her household was, filling out all these credit forms for, getting lines of credit and credit cards under this elderly lady's name. So, she was just adding to her bank account, and, the woman wasn't able to, buy groceries. So it was kind of like, a really sad situation that, she was in a underhanded way embezzling from the lady.
That's amazing that you are so passionate about helping survivors of domestic violence, regardless of their age group, because I think it's so critical that you brought that up about, those of us who are not in our 20s, 30s, or even 40s to, when you get hit with financial abuse in your 60s, you don't have a lot of time to recover. It's a whole different world, and it's a whole different feeling of hopelessness as well. And I think it's amazing that you have been out there when you didn't initially come to this profession as a survivor yourself, and that you just have a personal passion for it as being an advocate for people. I want to ask you two quick things. I always ask every guest, what is your tip for someone who is listening right now, who is still in an abusive relationship and may be learning about financial abuse and domestic violence for the first time?
The first thing, and it should always be the first thing anybody asks someone is, are you safe? Are you in a safe place? If you're not in a safe place, then, find someone, because I know this podcast is global. So whoever's listening, wherever you are, get in touch with whatever resources are in your area. I know if you're in the United States, there's the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. So, there's numbers that you can get. You can talk to somebody. So find a safe place to be, because so many different people fall into, they know the hard stories, they hear all that, but they don't think it's going to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it gets worse. As time progresses, and especially if nobody's getting any help, it's going to, get more and more and more. You hear of so many cases that, he was so sweet in the beginning or whatever, and till he wasn't. And then it's a whole different, mindset of, oh, now I'm scared to be here. So the safety of the home, that's why I always, hope out of anything that somebody listens to this podcast is you can get help. You're not alone. Connect with resources. And, that falls into that financial part. Even if you don't have a dollar to your name, reach out to someone and get some help and get out of an unsafe situation.
That's really great. Ask yourself if you're safe. Ask yourself that. And like I say as a byline for my show is, you have a right to feel financially safe as well, not just physically and emotionally safe. So that's fantastic. Ask yourself if you're safe. And what is your tip for someone who is listening, who is newly out of an abusive relationship, but not sure what they should do next?
The power of post-separation. And that's a term that I wasn't even familiar with until I started as an intern at the Ark. And I was like, post-separation. But it's almost every single case or every individual starts looking at how their life, you think, well, I've left, I'm gone, everything is good. Our brain almost thinks of it as that light switch where you flip, I'm gone, flip that light switch. Where's my new life? Be patient with yourself. It's not going to happen overnight. And also the being able to remember, what you need to do, that safety planning, whether it be financially safety planning, being able to see what you have and what you have access to, and also getting out and using your resources, because there's so many different people that you can call and find out, I don't know what I'm doing with my finances, but can you help me? That's what, wherever anybody is, that's what I always think is so important, is that connecting with someone else, because it's kind of like, you have all this going on in your mind. If you speak it to someone else, that kind of cuts that pressure into half. So you've kind of let the, what is it, like the tea kettle? You kind of let that pressure off by going and asking for help. So there's no way of knowing exactly where to go, but start the ball rolling. Pick up that phone or, look online, whatever resource, see what you can find in your area. And if that person can't help you, you go to the next until you get the answers you want, because the more you know, the more you can do for yourself. And that setups, more change.
Yeah, because a lot of us survivors were so codependent and these nostalgic relationships with friends and such. And we don't even see that what we really need is fresh ideas.
Right.
And I think that's great.
I think everybody is worthy of having a safe environment to live in and live a joyful life.
Absolutely. And Stephanie, I am so thrilled to have had you as a guest today. I thank you so much for taking time to talk to us about your passion for helping those who are suffering under the trauma of domestic violence. Again, Stephanie Russell, Community Educator, is with the Ark Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Shelter in the Central Texas region of Brownwood. And you can learn more about the Ark through their website, www.arkshelter.org. Thanks for listening. Thank you again, Stephanie, and we hope to see you all again soon.